title you can see, so I won't repeat that. Clearly efficient banking, and we're orientating this morning all to the wealth management sector, as you'd expect, given the conference. In terms of the panellists, and I'm not going to mention who it was, but one of the panellists said that he would spice it up this morning, didn't you, Joe? So let's hope for an interactive debate with this shy and retiring crowd. So without further ado, I'm going to let Joe introduce himself first, work down the panel, and then we'll get into the questions.
Very kind. Joe Parkin. I run our relationships with banks and digital channels at BlackRock. I'm incredibly passionate about fintech and the role it can play in democratizing financial services.
Thank you, Joe. My name is Sune Mortensen. I'm head of the investment and wealth solutions for London Stock Exchange in EMEA.
Hi, I'm Nina Jones, and I'm head of advisor experience for Fidelity International. And sort of like Joe, but I'm very, very passionate about clients.
Hi everyone, morning. My name's Tariq Khan. I'm from Objectway. So for those of you who don't know, we're a global fintech firm, and we provide wealth managers and private banks with front to back office software solutions. I run business development and client services. So for us, both of them go hand in hand. So we're measured on client outcomes, and that's our main driver when suggesting solutions. So I'm also very passionate about fintech. Yeah, very excited to be here.
So you are privileged, guys. You're in the room with some very passionate speakers here. So let's get right into it. We prepared some questions. You've got them in the materials that were issued at the start of the meeting. So I'm going to start with you, Joe. How can firms best prepare asset wealth managers to transition and, importantly, sustain to a customer-centric business model?
So I think the first thing is sort of technology doesn't cause greatness. And so, it's an absolute centerpiece for it. But I think in a world where, both asset and wealth management is more at people's fingertips, there is a shift in responsibility for retirement, particularly in the UK, but it will spread across Europe. We need to put the power more into the customer's hands, I mean the end customer here, in a way that makes sense to them. And I think technology can absolutely facilitate that by making it easy to understand, by making it engaging, and by delivering it in a way that's seamless into their everyday lives. So, kind of from my perspective, kind of having that shift onto the end consumer in terms of their responsibility around retirement, as well as the kind of advances we've made in technology. If you think about the iPhone only being 12 years old, 13 years old, actually getting on board with that and understanding you don't just deliver something that's technology enabled, listen to the customers, and make sure that you kind of adhere to those principles is super important.
Sune?
Yeah, I think we have some super important points here, but taking a look at the banks and the wealth managers and how about to transition, I think they need to think a little bit more modular than they used to do. Because in the good old days, when you made an IT implementation, it was so big and massive, and banks are, frankly, they're quite scared of it, I find. But now, with the SaaS, with the API, so on and so forth, you can be much more modular. So take small steps, give something to the clients consistently, but take small steps, and you can do it now because the technology is much more modular, interoperable, and you need to apply to that. You need to adhere to that, and don't go for these big bang solutions.
Sune's looking at me. I guess it's me. I think I'm probably going to shift slightly to, and I think I'm picking up on the word sustain and customer-centric business models. So for me, it's probably around the internal organisation. So if I look at sort of three core components that I believe, so senior leader sponsorship, that is consistent. So what tends to happen is that senior leaders perhaps ebb and flow sometimes as to what the latest trend is. And I think where I've seen successful customer-centric businesses is that the senior leaders maintain that position and keep talking about the customer over multiple years. I think the second aspect then that drives down through a cultural and a mindset, and it is years, because you'll take people along that are natural customer champions, but you've got to get the whole organisation moving. So I think that whole culture piece, and certainly I was very fortunate working for Microsoft, the shift in culture away from putting a computer on every desk to actually empowering individuals through cloud technology required a lot of cultural shift. And then the third one for me, and I'm smiling because I've got some colleagues in the audience, is all about the success metrics. So how are you measuring success in the organisation? And if they are not client-focused and they are revenue-generating as your outcomes, which is very, very important, but if that is not balanced with a customer metric, then to be honest, it's really, really difficult to get that sustainability.
Yeah, good points, Nina. And I think that clear, consistent, sustained senior leadership and view and outlook is important, isn't it? Tarek?
So I represent a fintech firm. However, I'd completely agree with Joe. Fintech's not the silver bullet. It's an enabler. That's it, right? So if you want to build a customer-centric platform, what you need to do is, first of all, work out what your customers actually want. Do all firms actually know that? No, probably they don't. So that's the first thing and the most important thing. And then I think actually revenue and customer journey go hand in hand. So I'll just give you an example from a case study. Okay, so what's actually possible out there? So we've been working with a firm and they wanted to become more customer-centric and they wanted to change their platform. I won't go through all the technology details, but it took about 18 months. But the thing that they, and I think we did as well, very, very well, is we worked in partnership. So Object2A don't have all the answers. The wealth manager A doesn't have all the answers. It requires an ecosystem. So I agree with you, there needs to be a modular kind of approach to architecture. However, you should leverage what's out there in the ecosystem. So, you know, they can leverage best practice from us. We need to ask them what their end goals are, etc. And then the outcomes are honestly astounding. So 18 months after a digital change, they had hopefully everyone's familiar with what NPS, Net Promoter Score. So it measures what your clients are thinking, what their client experience is. So it went from 43, so under 50 is bad. It went up to 63 within 18 months. And that was because clients were more now digitally engaged. They're part of a hybrid wealth management solution. So again, it's not all tech. It's how tech and face-to-face seamlessly integrates. And I think the outcomes are great. Revenues went up by 30%. So they way outstrip the market movements. I know markets are going down now, but they way outstrip market. So that means there was net new growth of clients and they got much more share of wallet of clients as well. So I think it's fundamental. If you get the customer experience right, revenues and profitability will come for sure.
And the curveball, I'm allowed to. They're going to hate me for it. How do you think about intergenerational wealth transfer? I apply it to Northern Trust. We have a big wealth business. You know, the old world way of actually sitting opposite somebody who's my age and even older than me and actually having the conversation versus their children and their children's children and the demands. Any comments from the panel?
Actually, I've hogged it, but I'll be quick, okay? So I mentioned before, right? A third of intergenerational clients are expected to leave, their incumbent wealth manager in the next 3 years. If you look at some UK studies, even more. You know, it looks at, there's about 60% are going to leave in 12 months if certain things don't happen. What do clients actually want? They want ease of access of information. They don't want to have to wait for it. They want an omni-channel experience, okay? And they also want a personalized experience, okay? And I think that's more pronounced in the younger generation. However, it's not that different across the board. And that's something I'd say that it's across the board. It's not just intergenerational.
I think technology has brought a lot of good stuff to the financial sector, but we're missing out on the customer experience, right? Onboarding has become easy and stuff, but when you look upon the neobanks and your brokers, the online wealth managers, it's still a little bit traditional, isn't it? They're communicating about products, nice metal cards, so on and so forth, but they're missing out on how to create a different experience online and not replicating their business model. We love Netflix, we love Amazon, despite the fact we've never ever met an employee from these companies, right? And in the bank, it's opposite. We like Northern Trust because we can meet Lawrence down at the branch office. You advised my parents and blah, 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 blah. And we need to change that. And I haven't really seen a lot of wealth managers, newcomers or incumbents, to leverage the customer experience to something completely different. And people can be more engaged, I expect.
Nina, do you have any comments before I move on?
So about 4 or 5 years ago, this was the question we got asked every single wealth manager, private bank, IFA we walked into. And so we actually went away and did a fair amount of research here. And whether, like, hopefully this provides you with some insight. So what we found is that the birth of a first child or grandchild is the absolute pivotal moment in a family having a discussion around money. Now, we're British, like we don't like talking about money. It's a taboo subject. I don't know how many people have actually had a conversation with their siblings around money, or their parents or even their grandparents around money. But actually, that birth of the first grandchild was magic. And so what that did is opened up the family conversation. And so the product that actually is the key to intergenerational wealth is the Junior ISA, which is probably the product that gets dismissed the most in the industry because it's small, it's slow to grow, et cetera, et cetera. What we then found is that first ISA, Junior ISA, if we could get like third parties to pay into it, that was also pretty magic because grandparents could pay into it, godparents could pay into it. The average person has 92 people at their wedding. All those 92, the first child typically born within 2 years of a wedding. You suddenly had a halo effect of these 92 people. You also then had a solution to solve for, we all do it when we go to friends' birthdays, christenings, etc., rather than buying them a plastic toy or whatever you do spend on, or even when your friends have children, you can put £50 or £40 or whatever it may be, or £10 into a Junior ISA, and you actually start that process of saving. It then created that halo effect of the parents thinking about their future and investing, and the grandparents, and most importantly, the intergenerational wealth conversation. So the answer we found when we're trying to solve for intergenerational wealth, the birth of a first child and a Junior ISA.
Thank you. Interesting. And I will say, I won't ask Nina for an answer to this. I'm time pressed as we all are, but Nina was actually, before we came in here, comparing just how much of a laggard our financial services industry is to her prior one in the in automotive industry, and it's really quite interesting that is the case. But okay, let's get to question 2. So let's dive a bit deeper. How can firms ensure that they are building next generational platforms that deliver exceptional customer experiences? Tariq, I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to start with you.
Okay, thank you. Again, I'll say, first of all, you need to know what your customer wants, right? So let's just assume that we're looking at the research that, for example, Objectway have been in, industry has been in. They want access, omni-channel access, and they want a hyper-personalized solution, okay? Hyper-personalized means it's something that is actually applicable to them. So this is scalability. This is scaling, but it doesn't have to be with every single individual. You can use personas. So like your example, Amazon, Netflix, etc., right? So what does that mean in terms of a platform? Well, it means it needs to be modular, because you're not gone are the days of the monolith front to back, you know, with all the costs and the implementation and the risks associated with it. Now we've got modular API solutions where we can use best of breed. I think that's really, really important. And it's out there. People are doing it. It's not something that we should look at in the future. We already have case studies in our industry where firms are doing it and they're getting good results. There's still a long way to go, but it's not something that's something in the distant future which we can't touch. It's there right now.
Tariq, quick question on the API economy. I certainly look, we've big digital bill going on, as many have in our shop. And when we talk about the API economy to large asset managers, never mind the mid and small ones, there's a degree of intellectual understanding what that is, but my goodness, we're not set up to access the API economy. How mature is it out there in the wealth sector?
It's actually, the technology exists, okay? The thing that is, so it's mature. So the answer is it's mature. The obstacle is the fact that obviously we've been around for a long time, as has your firm, and there's lots of legacy IT there. So there's a spaghetti IT architecture there, which has got lots of interdependencies, lots of risks associated. So the risk of changing is often high. Actually doing the change, it sounds very simple. Obviously implementation is a risk, but I think the tech is mature. The industry isn't. To Nina's point, we're laggards in terms of other industries, although we don't need to be leaders, is what I would say.
Yeah. Nina?
God, I feel like I've really trashed the financial services industry. Yeah, and I think at the risk of sounding like a principle-based approach, because I think it's really easy to sit up here and talk about big concepts, right, and then it's implementing them. But I think there is, and Tariq mentioned it, around really understanding what your customer outcomes are. So I don't know whether it's the next-gen platform that's important, or whether it's actually what your customer outcome is, and do you really know your customer, which, and it was mentioned on the panel at the beginning of this session, is all about data. So I think probably if you have the data, and to Tarek's point as well, in the spaghetti, and I think I witness an organisation at the moment that probably hasn't treated data as its assets. So I think there's that real understanding. We've treated the big boxes that might have been kicking tin in the server basement or now is in a cloud hosted by Microsoft, wherever else. But actually the data is the piece that you shouldn't and can't outsource. That then enables you to be, and I'm talking about, I love this, right, because I'm talking really theoretical, but I think it's that principle-based approach that then enables a lot more flexibility and being nimble with and agile with the platforms that you then generate. So when we were talking about intergeneral wealth, if you actually understand who your clients are and all of the links and understanding that through relational data capability, how you then transpose that onto an online platform for the sons and daughters or whatever, of the ISA capability, whatever, to a certain extent that becomes your prerogative. But if you don't have that data at the beginning, then I think the rest of it gets really difficult.
And I think many of us would agree that that's one of the hardest things to do. Stand up really high quality centralized data that you can then persist to the underlying engines. Sune?
Yeah, I think 2 points. One, as vendors, we have a responsibility to bring more context to companies, because even though when you do stuff at, let's say, Northern Trust or Fidelity, you try to look at, best in class, but we often find that companies become too myopic. They look into their own solution, their own legacy, and they need to have more context, because there are so many people out there struggling with the same issues, and they could learn more. So we need to bring more context, first of all. You need to seek more context. Second, on the technology part, I agree with you that change is always hard and difficult, but I would actually argue with the rise of APIs, the risk has gone down, because you can actually be a little bit more modular. You don't have to do these massive changes and massive implementations. We can take snippets of your data, we can start work with that and slowly build out. So I think we need to bring that maturity to the industry and say it's not as dangerous as it used to be, because we can be more granular and do it more granular in the way we implement. So the risk is actually going down, I would say.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. And then Joe, just finally on this question.
I sort of interpreted it as like the next generation of humans, rather than, and I think actually like the wealth and asset management industry traditionally is basically focused on digitalizing what they have already, not actually reinventing for the next generation. And I think if you see the growth of certain, like whether it's trading platforms or crypto or whatever it may be across the world for that generation between 25 and 40, I don't think it sits necessarily kind of with some of the traditional players. And so actually I think we need to focus on, let's stop digitalizing what we have today and work out how these people actually operate in real life, and then insert ourselves into that flow, make it seamless, make it every day, and make it part of their financial lives. And like controversially, I also think you need to put it alongside like banking, insurance. I think the super apps are, over the next 3 to 5 years, going to become incredibly important in people's lives.
Yeah, very much so. Make it easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Sune's going to anchor the third question, which is really very linked to what we've been talking about. How can technology assist firms to better support and retain their existing customers and appeal to new ones, which, again, we've been starting to touch on?
We've heard the numbers right. So a lot of clients are looking for a new wealth manager, a new provider. And I think the reason is that they don't get the experience they expect. The benchmark is not the wealth manager next door or the bank next door. It's actually the Amazons and the Netflix, because there you get the experience. And where I'm a little, one could almost say disappointed, is that we have not seen the sector yet embrace a new experience. We know so much about behavior today, all the studies around, behavioral economics, how people make decisions, what they want to, what data they need. We don't see it applied very many places. We haven't seen that silver bullet yet. You talk about data as being key, actually the product, I agree, but it's what data? People actually suffer from infobesity at the moment because they get so much data thrown at them. So if you sort it out, if you make it relevant, that's personalization, and then create a more engaging experience. I think actually that would be the next step. So the better customer experience is yet to come in the financial sector, and that will be the next big wave, if you ask me.
Yeah,
basically.
and Sune, let me just press you, and I'd like to ask the other panelists this question as well. We've certainly found getting hold of your data, centralizing it, making sure it's of the requisite quality, being able to persist it to underlying engines in a real-time, omni-channel environment is really, really hard. And any words, any comments? I know we're not technologists on this panel, but any thoughts?
Small steps, really small steps. What I've seen and what we're working with clients on is usually they take on to a bigger project. They're trying to boil the ocean here, small steps. What is most important when you make decisions at Fidelity, right, as a client? Start there, and with APIs, you can actually start in a corner and build out from there. That would be my advice.
Yeah, good. Tarek?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that, again, I don't think it's like a far-flung future. For example, data is all over the place, right? Just imagine that your CRM was integrated with your client portal, or your PMS was integrated with your CRM and client portal. The data you've got in there is, believe me, it's enough for you to form a personalized experience already. You don't need any AI. You don't need anything like that. You just need a simple flow of data from, say, your CRM to your portal, and it's already there. I know it's very easy to say. But I'm just saying in principle, it's actually easy to do as well.
Yeah, I'm going to dig in a little more in a minute, but let me just let Nina pass comment and Joe, and then I'll just have a couple more questions on this.
I agree actually completely with Tarek. I'm smiling because honestly it doesn't sound much, and I think that's probably, if I'm really honest with you, that was my big observation. So I worked in automotive for a long time, and actually the integration of data happened 10 years ago, if not further, around the car, the owner, and particularly now cars are connected, it becomes even more vital. So you're actually connecting the car when it's being produced, and that flow of data is coming in, and then it gets married to a customer, and then they get divorced, and someone else gets married to the car, etc., etc. And I can't agree with you more. It's difficult to physically do, but I think, again, it comes to that senior leadership piece, which is actually, if that needs to be a organisational intent that is understood throughout the organisation. And if I'm really honest with you, I think that's where we're now starting. I'm smiling at some guys over there, because that's really what we now need to start banging the drum about, which is the importance of that single source of truth. And you're right, Tarek, it is just a CRM. It is literally name and address, who we talking to on a daily basis, and what are they doing. And that's a really simple and great start to start personalising.
Agreed. Joe?
I agree with everything that's been said. I think the final thing, like I just say, is about this sort of constant iteration. And I think too often we're working in, we drop something into the market and kind of, do we actually test it? Do we actually iterate it? There's a list of things we couldn't do. Do we ever do them? No. And I don't think we ever obsess about every single screen or every single page that client is seeing, everything experience, and even create moments of delight, which is what all the best firms do on your app in a day-to-day basis. And that's who you're competing against, right? If you want to go after, the market that's constantly on their phone with a challenger bank, et cetera. So, and little things like, and it's in my mind because we were talking about it yesterday on the desk, but there's a challenger bank in the UK where you can drag your salary like one day before it actually lands into your kind of bank account, and it gives it like a confetti and that sort of stuff. And yesterday you dragged it onto a pumpkin. It was a pumpkin, which it's the smallest thing, but it's the moment of delight that you get your salary one day early. They've solved, it's just a very technical challenge. The actual experience, the moment of delight is very simple. But things like that I think we need to get better at, because that's who we're competing against.
Yeah, I agree. Just before I move off this topic, and again, not pre-planned, so I'll ask any of the panelists to comment. Assuming, big assumption, we get to the point where the data is centralized and we trust the data, analytics, AI, any comments on the use of the data and how you drive business models as a result?
We did some research on this, and Objectway published something in the FT earlier this year, so some of you might have seen it. So it was just looking at the role of AI in wealth management, yeah? And actually, it's not the highest priority to begin with, which is probably right. There's more sorting out legacy IT architecture, producing a great customer experience. But anyway, AI was somewhere there as well, around about the top 5. Now, 40% of firms had done something early stage, meaning they had a plan. That was it. And about 25% of firms had actually done something. And what that something was, in this instance, was something that Objectway calls a portfolio optimizer, and I know other firms have mentioned it as well, but it basically gave recommendations to an end client on their portfolio based on suitability. So just remember, you have to have the integration of, say, a CRM or a fact find to your portfolio management solution and your portal. It's actually quite simple. It's not like complex AI. And basically they were saying, look, Lawrence, you said in your fact find that you're interested in ESG. Did you know that these funds reduce carbon footprint by X, and it's more than what you have already? So there was something there. So I guess the point is that the technology is there. I think the drive for it, actually, it's not the highest priority, and probably correctly so, I think. So yeah.
Thanks, Tarek. Any other comments?
Oh,
Nina's ready. She's poised. Go on, Nina.
It was just to say that the drive for it, you talked about senior leadership. I mean, we're talking about AI here. We're talking about great customer experiences. But if you go to the HSBCs and the Fidelities of the world, the rogue advisor is still a massive issue, right? Just using internal house views. So it's something about agreeing what flow of information we have in a company across divisions, across business units, across service offerings. And that very, very basic decision is something that needs to be driven from the highest place. And we see a lack of that, basically.
Yeah, I think it's following on from what Tarek talked about. I think for me, AI, whether it's AI, machine learning, I don't know, the two kind of get interchanged. But and we've actually got an application that we're just starting to use now in Advisor Solutions. What it does for me is it democratizes, and we've used that word, we talked about that in the panel at the beginning, it democratizes decisions. So one thing I would say, that everybody in this room talks a language that no clients understand. So I don't know what pension crystallization means. That's not a word I use. I don't know what ESG is, because that's not a word I use in common daily language. So I think for me, the capability of AI is a capability, but what it actually has a real capability of doing is actually communicating to customers in a way that they understand. Because trust me, having walked into this industry 3.5 years ago, I still don't know what people are talking about. I literally don't, because we use a language that can be excluding and exclusive.
Agreed.
So for me, sorry, it's not that I'm passionate about this, but I'm going to get rid of all the language that we use in Fidelity today, because, and I think that's what AI does, exactly what Tarek talked about. We could use it to actually really help and really support customers to understand the choices that they're making in the language that we're using.
Yeah, well said. I agree. Sune, did I see that you wanted to make a comment, or are you good? You're okay. All right, we're going to do two more things, given that we've got 12 minutes left. There are some questions here that have been fed, and I'll ask for any hands up in the audience, and then I'll let the panelists prepare their pearls of wisdom, the top 3 things that each of them would suggest you walk out of this room thinking about. So, first question. Anyone on the panel can answer. Don't be shy. How is technology helpful in engaging the younger generation? I think we covered that to some extent, but any other additional comments?
I mean, it's...
Joe, this is your opportunity to spice it up.
No,
remember?
I mean, but it is the only opportunity. Like, you have to deliver it. I mean, they're not going to go into an office, right? So, like, it's your only opportunity. Like, it's not even it's table stakes.
Table stakes.
And like an engaging, easy to use app that competes with some of the top apps in the world is your only opportunity.
Yeah, agreed. Any other comments?
I just agree. The research just says that younger generation are going to leave more than the older generation because of the inefficiencies of technology. So, yeah, good.
Yeah, it's just a minimum expectation, isn't it, from the youngers?
Can I just add on
You
to
may.
that, Laura? It's only that I've just done a social media project at work, which for me was like, I still haven't downloaded TikTok. I can't quite bring myself to do that. But I think for me, what we really started realising is that actually, where are you on a social? So I think there's a whole social first element. And then once you have, and you're taking your message and you're educating to where the younger generation are, whatever that is, because I do agree with Tarek completely. Everybody wants it to be easy and frictionless, no matter whether you're 80 or 8, it doesn't matter. But for me, then the technology comes in with how do you continue that journey? So if you are social first as a organisation, that journey needs to be seamless, whether it's from the gram, TikTok, wherever else, but how do you continue that through for that younger generation or to be easy and relevant?
Yeah, good points. Okay, any others? All right, last question, certainly on the iPad here. What elements of the customer journey or experience need the most attention? Again, free flow.
How we explain investment products to customers.
Yeah. Well said. Again, back to Nina's comments. Demystify.
Nina, did you ever sell any cars by going into a car showroom and there was just an engine there?
And I think adding on to Joe as well, it's that empathy. I think for me, it's, you know, you're here, I've just been to a customer experience conference, all that was talked about was empathy. So I think it's the explanation, but it's also understanding the context that the client's in and that empathy piece as well.
I think all organisations should employ someone like Nina who's completely not from this industry and can actually disabuse all of our
I'm open to offers, by the way.
Tarek, Sune?
Basically, you want to see, like, but what do clients actually want from customer experience? We already mentioned it. You know, they want instant information. They want it personalised. It doesn't seem like a lot to ask.
No.
You know, that's the reason why, for example, if you look at Capgemini's World Wealth Report, about 40% of clients think that fintechs, such as the FANGs, so Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, can do a better job. Why can they do a better job? Simply because they know their customer better, and they will give proactive notifications to them to say, you looked at X, Y, and Z, have you considered this? This is related. You know, it's not rocket science.
It's not to get philosophical or anything, but I agree on the what is the product, but also why, right? Because there's a huge pension gap. It will only grow from here. The macroeconomic climate has completely changed since, you know, we've had tailwind since 1989. That will change completely, and make young people understand they have a responsibility here, and they have to do it themselves. So the why, I think, is also super important.
Good answers, thank you. As we sat up here for 30 seconds before this session, we were commenting how shy and retiring the audience look. So would you like to help us with any questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Dorota Zimnoch. I represent Microsoft. Hi, Nina. And the question is, we hear about personalization, we hear about what customers expect. My question is about privacy and about confidentiality of data, and you know, how you're observing this as maybe some blocker to some solutions, and also how to really, you know, overcome some of these bars. We recently seen the news how many asset managers were fined with the billions of dollars for using, I don't know, WhatsApp, etc., for sending some documents over to clients, right? In a goodwill, but hey. So I would like to hear your view on this topic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good question. Any views?
Well, obviously, the market information we don't bring, you don't have that issue. But what we are seeing in terms of smart solution is that a lot of the personalization now is being made at sort of the customer interaction place. So if you have your vault in place in the company, you can actually make the personalization as the client interacts with your digital platform. And that is a game changer. You don't have to exchange that much data back and forth. It is a game changer, but you're right. We need to give up information in order for us to get a more personalized experience. So,
yeah. Okay. Any other views?
I think it's a great question, but I also think that personalization and customer experience and regulation don't really conflict. Because regulation, it should be your internal journey already. So you should already have it in place to say, listen, we are not going to send you a KYC docs over WhatsApp. Yeah, that's not a personalization thing. That's an internal operational thing. Whereas personalization, I think, is something different, which is we know that you like this. It's nothing private to you. And even if it is private, it's a secure channel anyway. And this is what we suggest. So I don't think there's a conflict.
Yeah, I'd agree. I totally agree with Tarek. There's something interesting, isn't there? The fact that we actually need consumer duty, and the fact that we actually need to have treating customers fairly in the industry. But that said, yeah, we're just doing a chat program at the moment, actually, just talking about that. And I think what it requires is just more thinking around how do we enable that seamless, trusted, easy client experience, but within a secure manner. And I think what that just means that we need to do more thinking and diligent thinking around how we do that. Because I agree with you about WhatsApp. It was really interesting when you start getting into that. Whilst it could be easy and it sits on a client phone, but actually it's probably not our requirement from a security point of view. So again, principled approach, and then we need to do the thinking to make it easy.
Okay, I am going to move us on. I want time for 2 more questions, and then we'll finish up. Yes, please. You have to be quick with your hands, see.
Hi, I'm Christina. I'm currently working in the wealth management and wealth tech industry. My question is that in the wealth management industry, we are highly regulated. And because of that, there's some solution that we think will be very innovative, is the customer journey. And then we will meet some of the challenges from, say, in the master trust market, for example, from the trustee. So how do we balance that highly regulated environment with the innovations?
Okay.
Take an example, pension transfer. Right? Like, we know that everyone wants everything on app, but pension transfer is quite risky, so we don't want it to be done on app because there may be a mistake, and then there will be a negative consequences to the client if they do it wrongly on the app.
Okay,
So,
good question. 30 seconds each, please. Joe.
I just don't think everything can be completely digital. Like, a pension transfer is an incredibly important moment of someone's life. And, in the same way we use doctors and the medical industry, like, I think what we've got to get better at is using technology to triage, using technology to solve simple problems. But actually, when we have that moment where we are incredibly sick or we've got something that needs attention, that's when we need a doctor. And so, like, I'm not an advocate of, like, everything needs to be digital, everything needs to be technology. I just think we need to get better at, there are more people coming into the wealth management industry or the investment industry than we can possibly deal with face to face, and so we need to evolve as an industry. And the advisor is crucial. The advisor is like the GP or even the surgeon, and he needs to be deployed at the point of necessity, not at every single. Like, we start with advice, we start with someone face to face. We can't do that in this world.
Okay, keep going. Sune?
I think more interaction with the regulators. I think often when we look upon the intent of the law, it's actually to improve customer experience, customer safety, and so on and so forth. So we need to work more with regulators, more sandboxing, more interaction. I think that's the only way forward.
Thank you. Nina? Tarek?
Yeah, I would just say regulation's there to protect the consumer. And I think, if anything, there's an argument that it could even drive more innovation. Not just digital, but the way we speak to our consumers. So, again, I think it could be seen the other way, actually.
And sorry, guys, we probably won't have time to do all these questions justice, but I think the guys are staying around, so grab them afterwards. Last question. Yes, please.
Virgilo from Challenger. Just wanted to ask you guys, talking about technology as a method of like a tools how to improve the efficiency of your business. At the same time, technology has kind of moved a huge number of people toward assets that you don't even like have a focus on. I mean, we've seen people trading options on Robinhood. We've seen like people younger than 30, they don't care about mutual funds and they care about crypto. I mean, I'm not judging you, it's the correct way, but has any of your organizations feel that they are missing, they don't have customers below 30? I mean, what are you doing to educate people, to tell them, look, I mean, maybe digital assets has a small, portion as part of, strategy, but you shouldn't be like putting all your money from work there. And I mean, I've seen for example, Fidelity has a very good digital asset division, but it's actually for professionals. It's not for the average young kid that is just loading up on Bitcoin or Ethereum or all these.
Okay, thank you. So younger than 30, digital assets and equivalent. Views?
I mean, we're back to the why. I completely agree, and that's not savings or investing. That's gamification. It's play money. It's casino, actually. That's my own personal opinion. I'm ready to defend it. So yes, we have an issue, and that's why I highlighted we need to explain why, and that's why you need to have a play portfolio if you want to do that, and then you need to have a sound basis. That's my point of the why.
We're a fintech firm, so we talk with our clients who'd be wealth managers when designing a solution. So if they want to attract 30-year-olds that want to trade crypto, I think the answer is not, oh, it's just, can you enable that as a fintech firm? So if you don't have it yourself, you would plug into someone with an API. I think that's how it is.
Okay, and again, apologies for the time restraint here. I am going to have to move us to the thing I think everyone's been waiting for here, which is your top 3 pearls of wisdom. I'm going to start with Tariq and work this way. So it will be repetitious. We will have covered the topics, but the most important things, doesn't have to be 3.
Okay, top 3 pearls of wisdom. Okay, you'll see how wise I am now. I would say know what your customers want. Use fintechs and your other partners to share best practice with. You're not in this journey alone. And the third thing I'd say is dream big. Dream really big for today, not for tomorrow.
Well said. Nina?
I'm going to nick Tariq's, which is know your customer, but probably more importantly, know your customer journeys, the outcomes they want to drive, and what you're going to deliver for them, and what you don't deliver for them as well, just as importantly. And then I'm going to go right back up to the senior organisation, which I said before, the senior leadership. So that needs to be client focused, and that will require a shift, and it can be painful in a lot of cases. And we'll need someone like me to persuade them an awful lot to do that. And then the third one is the sandwich, which is, are we rewarding and recognising our internal teams and employees for doing the right thing, and balancing that client success with the reward, with the revenue, and also, of course, with costs. But those 3 for me should always be balanced, not having a prioritization.
Yeah, good. Sune?
Customer centricity, obviously, is the first one. The second one is seek context. You're not alone out there. Seek inspiration, work with partners, be modular. And third one is that, that's a good one, stepwise approach. Take it step by step. Deliver something today, something tomorrow. Don't wait until the day after tomorrow with a big bang.
Within the context of an overall vision.
Yep.
Yeah. And then finally, Joe.
Continuously inventing 3 off. So I think obsess over everything you put in front of clients. Be truly obsessive about it. Everything they see, everything they experience. Provide moments of surprise and delight. And the final one, I'll just...
That's fine. They're good answers as well, guys. So, look, there will be a sense of humour failure from the organiser if I allow this to go on. So, thank you very much to the panellists. Thank you for listening.